your chances of having a good interview are about to go through the roof. Now, job interviews are stressful. Palpitations, excessive sweating, dry mouth, upset stomach, get the shakes, and that weird blotchy redness that spreads across your neck and your chest. It's stressful because you're being judged, and often on things like your demeanor or your voice or appearance or apparent levels of confidence, most of which aren't even good indicators of whether or not you can do the job. So how are you supposed to be your best self in that situation? And what do these people want from us anyway? What do they want? 'Cause it'd be good to know, right? I've interviewed hundreds of people for our agency, so I am one of those people. So I just thought, why don't I just tell you? Now, those of you watching this will fall into one of two groups. Some of you are in group number one. You have the luxury of time. Maybe you have a job already, thinking of changing careers, or you're at uni, or you just graduated and are planning on having an interview for a job in a few weeks or months. You got a bit of time to learn a few things, do some research, get prepared. But some of you are in group number two. Now, you already have an interview that you're not ready for. Maybe that interview is like tomorrow or today. Maybe you're on your way to the interview right now. I've got you covered whichever of those two groups you fall into. But if you do have a little longer, I'm going to recommend another video for you to help you go and do that research and basically become an expert in record time. But today we're going to look at some immediate things that you can do right now. And because you don't have a lot of time, I'm going to recommend you scroll down the description, stick your email in the link, and you'll get an email with all the notes and all the tips from this video, so you can just be reading them on your way into the interview. So pause the video right now, go and do that. I'll wait. Waiting's boring. Now, one of the first things you could be asked, maybe before you've even sat down, is the annoying question, tell me about yourself. Now, I ask this annoying question all the time, not to be annoying, but because I genuinely just want to know about the person I'm interviewing. Now, confession time, I personally often only get involved in interviews at the second interview stage. So very often I don't know a lot about the person. I haven't been in the first interview. I might not have even read the CV. And lots of people will be in this position. They'll come in to interview somebody. They don't know who it is. The meeting's gone in the diary. You turn up, you enter the room. You don't know anything about the candidate at all. We should know about the candidate before we come in, but we don't have the time. Work's stressful. It's a crowded diary. It's just the reality. If I'm lucky, I'll remember their name from the calendar invite. So before they start presenting to me, I just want to get a little flavor of who they are, especially what their name is. And we want to start the interview softly. We just want to warm up a little bit. I'll turn the question around on myself. Let's say somebody asks me, tell me a bit about yourself. So here's how I'd answer that question. I say, well, my name is Paul Egan. I grew up in the Midlands where my childhood ambition was to be the fastest man on earth. But I studied music technology at uni and I started my career in the music industry, working as a sound engineer and musician and producer at a small recording studio. That's what brought me to London. I then started a business in CD and DVD manufacturing with a studio manager. And that's when I created my first website. I was self-taught SEO, paid search, CRO, coding, and generally had to do digital marketing. And then in 2008, iTunes rose to prominence and no one wanted to buy CDs or DVDs anymore. So I needed a new path. I love the digital marketing elements of my role, but I didn't like VAT returns. So that's what led me to apply for this role today. Outside of work, I like rock climbing, and my claim to fame is that I have climbed the mountain that is drawn on the end of a Toblerone bar. And that's it. It's just like a mini autobiography. And here's the structure. My name is, I grew up in, where you went to school, uni, what you studied. If applicable, I worked in a job where I learned or got excited about something or realized something. My interest in the field developed when, talk about what made you interested, what got you into it. So here I am today, applying for this role. Outside of work, I've got some hobbies. Here's my interesting claim to fame or weird fact about me. And that's it. And then you just stop talking. I've written it all out for you in the description below, and it's also in that summary email that I mentioned. So you can just go through the template, you can just swap my words for yours, and then you've got your mini bio all planned out, and all you got to do is rehearse it. And the rehearsal part, by the way, is very important. You've got to practice it out loud ideally into a mirror, or film yourself doing it. You want it to be really slick, so it just rolls off the tongue nice and naturally. Remember, you're going to be nervous in the meeting, so you need to be 2-3 times more comfortable saying the things that you're going to say at the start of the meeting as you'd normally be. And in practicing it out loud and saying the words, you might realize you want to make a few tweaks. So doing that first is really, really valuable. If you're on your way into the interview right now and you don't have time to practice it out loud, the next best thing, this is going to sound silly, but the next best thing is just to mouth the words. So you could be on your phone, on the bus or on the tube, or you could even be sat in the foyer of wherever you're going to do your interview. You don't want to be saying your thing out loud, so just be mouthing it. And even that is going to be a big help for you. Right, so here are some other annoying questions that you might get asked. And I actually don't ask these questions, mostly because it's really easy to prepare for them. But you might get asked these by somebody, so it's important to think about. And the big one that everyone dreads is this: what's your biggest weakness? Tell us about a time when you struggled. Something along those lines. Now, the good news is it's really easy to prepare for that question, which is why I don't ask it. All you need to do is take a well-known, neutral personality trait, talk about the well-known downsides of that personality trait, then talk about how you've overcome them to maximize the upsides of that personality trait. So a good example of this is where you sit on the introvert-extrovert spectrum. Being an introvert or an extrovert isn't a positive or negative thing. It's just a thing. It's just a description of where you get your energy from. Neither is intrinsically good or bad, and you'll be one of them. And the people in the room who are interviewing you will also be introvert or extrovert. I'm an introvert. That means I have a natural tendency to be quieter in meetings with lots of people around or brainstorms. Perhaps I allow myself to be talked over by extroverts. So I often struggle to get a word in edgeways, or I just want time to consider what I'm going to say before I say it, by which time the conversation has moved on. I've had to overcome that by preparing for meetings well in advance, developing my own point of view ahead of time. And then when the meeting comes round, I'm then much more confident in making my contribution. I don't need time to think, and can often end up making my point quicker than an extrovert can. Because my point of view has been really well thought through, it's often a pretty good point of view and it goes down very well. If you're an extrovert, you could give the opposite example, that your natural tendency for extroversion means you've had to develop your ability to spot all the introverts in the room and make sure they're being brought into the conversation so that everyone in the room can benefit from what the introverts have to say. And that way, the meeting can produce more value overall. The key words here are natural tendency. Okay, natural tendency. You're not depicting a flaw, it's just a character trait that's neither good nor bad, showing how that character trait poses a challenge and how you overcome it. The great thing about using the introvert-extrovert example is that everyone is either an introvert or an extrovert. If you're an introvert and you're talking about being an introvert, the people in the room who are also introverts will be thinking to themselves, yeah, me too. Yeah, I've been in exactly that situation, and you'll start to build rapport with them. Or they'll have the opposite character trait, in which case they will really appreciate how you are empathizing with them and modifying your behavior to have a more productive working relationship with them. So the structure is, I am or I have a character trait. This means I have a natural tendency to, and then put in an obvious example of that natural tendency. I've had to overcome this by, and talk about a way you've overcome it, or are working on overcoming it with an example. This means that now, and show how actually it's a net benefit and not a weakness. Again, this is written out in the description and it's in the email if you want to get the email. So go again and copy it, and again, practice it out loud. It's got to sound conversational. So the third point is around coming across as a secure, confident, emotionally mature person, which can be a bit tricky in a nerve-wracking interview situation when you're essentially being cross-examined. You need to exude confidence, but not be arrogant. Avoid coming across as defensive when the inevitable happens and you get a question that you can't answer. And generally avoid any of the behaviors that might turn people off, like saying sorry too much if you can't think of an answer. Like, remember, it's very likely that you'll be working alongside at least one of the people that's in the interview with you. One of them could be your new manager or a co-worker, be a teammate. They could even end up reporting to you if you're applying for a managerial role. Put yourself in their shoes. Wouldn't you want to work with somebody who you find likable, who you might get on with? Someone you could maybe imagine like going for a beer with or having a bit of a laugh during the working day. You're able to work together well on difficult problems where you might have a difference of opinion. So this is all about building rapport. First of all, you can make yourself come across more confident by making yourself feel comfortable. So how do you make yourself feel comfortable in a job interview? Possibly the most uncomfortable situation you could put yourself in. So before you go into the interview, you're going to do some breathing exercises. You're going to breathe in slowly to the count of 4. When you breathe in all the way in, you're going to take one more little breath in. You'll be able to fit a bit more in, I promise you. And then you're going to breathe out for the count of 8. This has been shown to be the most effective breathing method to calm your nerves. Do this several times, ideally with your eyes closed, or if you're in some public situation and it looks weird, if you're in the foyer waiting for your interview to happen and you want to do this, it might look a bit weird if you close your eyes, but what you can do is just stare into the middle distance or look at the ceiling, look at the floor, look at some blank object where there's no visual stimulus, and then just do your breathing that way. And when you're doing it, you want to try and just relax all the muscles in your body. Just make everything go floppy, shake out your arms and legs. Even if you do that for a few seconds, it can change how you feel. You can even do it during the interview. So if you're in the interview and you're starting to feel stressed, you can just do some of these things. You can breathe in and out. You're breathing all the time anyway. It's not weird to breathe. Just breathe a little deeper and a little slower. Make sure you're breathing out all the way. Because when you panic, the tendency is to hyperventilate. So you start to suck air in all the time, but you forget to breathe out. If you breathe all the way out, your lungs will naturally suck a lot of air back in, right down into the bottom of your lungs. I promise you, it will relax you. Right, so the next thing is body language. Body language is super important. Remember, you're going to be sat down, unless you're presenting and you've decided to stand up. At least part of the interview is going to be sitting down. So the body language that's really important is going to be the top half of your body. And the first thing we're going to do is practice smizing. So I learnt this from the American supermodel Tyra Banks on America's Next Top Model. One of the exercises for the contestants was take a really good-looking driving license photo. And you're not allowed to smile on your driving license photo, but you don't want to look sort of super stern. So she taught them smizing. And smizing essentially is when your face is not smiling, the cheeks aren't going up, the corners of the mouth aren't going up, but your eyes are smiling, hence smizing. And it looks a bit like this. You relax your face, relax your eyes, and you're just gonna... It's super subtle, but it makes a really big difference to how you're coming across. And it's a great way of conveying a bit of warmth in a scenario where it doesn't make sense to be smiling. But smizing is always appropriate because you're essentially communicating to the person that you're talking to and saying, we're friends, we have rapport, this is going to be a good conversation. Talking of building rapport, you can also mirror body language. If somebody's facing you and they're leaning to one side with their elbow on the table and their legs crossed like this, you would simply do the opposite. So you would mirror their body language. If you mirror somebody's body language, they're more likely to feel like you're in rapport, and then you are also more likely to feel like you're in rapport. So both of you feel more comfortable, the conversation then happens much more naturally. One final tip on body language is around your posture. Keep your chin slightly raised. That makes you seem engaged, makes you look confident rather than sort of looking down here at your toes. Lean slightly forwards when somebody's talking to you and try to turn your body to face them. Turn your shoulders, turn your head, turn your hips as much as you can. These are swivel chairs, makes it easier, but you might have to sort of shuffle around just to do it a bit more naturally. It'll make you appear much more confident and generally just more engaged. So the final thing you need to do in an interview situation is to avoid any negative reactions to what's going on and what's happening to you in the room. Interviews are supposed to be tough. The interviewers are trying to find out what you're made of and where your knowledge and experience begins and ends, so they can figure out if you can do the job or not. So they're going to have to push you to your limits and ideally past your limits to find out where your limits are. That's going to feel a bit uncomfortable. It just is. It means there are some questions you're going to ask that you're not going to know the answers to. There are some situations they're going to put you in that you're probably not going to know how to deal with. And the main thing you need to know is that that is okay. They're expecting it, so you should too. When you're asked questions that are difficult, you don't know the answer, you're not sure, or you're asked about experience that you don't have, there are two things you must not do. The first is you must not get defensive. If they tell you you've got the answer wrong, use it as a learning opportunity. Again, let's go back to the fact that these people might be working with you in the future, and they need to know that if you get something wrong, that you're going to be able to understand that you've got something wrong, figure it out, and then next time get it right. You want to come across as curious and interested in their superior knowledge. You want to know why you're wrong, not just that you're wrong. It will show them that you're willing to learn and that you're emotionally mature enough to not get defensive. Most importantly, it's just going to show that you're going to be easy to work with. Defensiveness is a massive red flag for me. The other thing you don't want to do is go too far the other way and just say, I don't know, and just give up on the question. Or say sorry all the time when you don't know the answer to the questions, or if you feel like the interview's going badly, it's very easy for someone to get into a sorry spiral. It makes you appear junior. It looks like you don't have any backbone. It looks like you collapse under pressure really easily. So instead, if you don't know the answer to a question, just try to work it out. Be honest. Say, I don't know the answer to that, but let me have a think about it, and then start thinking out loud. So remember when you maybe did an exam when you were younger, perhaps you did a maths exam, you used to get marks for your working, didn't you, as well as whether you got the answer right. So if you got the answer wrong, but the examiner, you could see that you'd done the right method, then you could get some marks. So it's the same in a job interview. Of course, sometimes an answer it's not really something you can work out. Like if they're asking you whether you know the name of something, you can't figure that out. You either know it or you don't. In which case, just be honest. Tell me you don't know. Say you just haven't come across that before and just ask what it is. Again, you're using it as an opportunity to learn something. Then when they tell you, thank them for telling you and tell them that you're going to go and do some more research and reading around that. And then do go and do some more research and reading about that, because it obviously is important. If you use these difficult questions and situations as an opportunity to learn, two things are going to happen. Number one, you're going to come across better and you're more likely to get offered a job. Number two, if you're not offered a job, you're going to prepare yourself better for a subsequent interview where you might get asked the same questions. And that's like a really great mindset to have towards interviews in general. They're an opportunity to learn. They're an opportunity to progress your career, even if that isn't the interview that's going to result in you taking a job. If you do have a bit more time to prepare, you might want to become a digital marketing expert in record time. Now, if that sounds good to you, have a look at this next video where I'm going to show you exactly how to do that.